Evening. Welcome to a parent presentation tonight by one of our community partners. Russell Baxter is the owner of Foundations Counseling, and he's going to talk to us this evening about technology and emotional health. And so, Russell, thank you so much for being able to join us this evening, and you have a very important topic. And I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate you all having me to do this presentation. Um, I am very passionate about this subject because I've seen the impacts that it has on our teenagers and our young adults and even our older adults. And how it affects our ability to function um, emotionally and the impacts that it has on our ability to focus and connect relationally with others. Personally, yes, I am the owner of Foundations Counseling. We're in Colleyville. I work a lot with failure to launch young men and women who are trying to be adults, trying to transition into adulthood, and see an unhealthy relationship with technology. Um, so I see this is becoming our next big mental health crisis. And so that's tonight. I'm just going to be talking a little bit about what are some signs of unhealthy technology use, what are some ways that we can combat it as a family and as a community, and as a school and as a school district. So now, to be clear, I'm not anti-technology. I love technology just as much as the next person. I have cell phone. I have an Apple Watch. I play video games on the weekends. I use all of the same technologies that everybody else does. And I often battle with self-regulation myself. And so I know the dangers and the pitfalls that befall all of us. And it's a very easy, slippery slope to fall into. So the first thing that we have to understand is not all technology is bad. And we have to figure out, is this unhealthy? And there is a whole spectrum. It's not just as simple as all technology is bad and we need to go back to being Amish, or we need to, um, go back to just writing with paper and ignore computers altogether. Or otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do things like we're doing right now, where I'm able to present to people, record this, and have a resource now for the community. That is priceless. We would never be able to do this in a time where a pandemic is still a problem. And so technology does serve its purpose, but there are some signs that we need to be able to see whether or not it is unhealthy. So one of the first things we look at is compulsive or uncontrolled use of electronic devices. And we see this with kids as young as 3 or 4, where they have no ability to self-regulate. They have no ability to stop without being told or having it removed from them. There's excessive non-work time spent on devices. Now, I really wanted to distinguish between that because, I will often spend 3 or 4 hours if I have telehealth sessions with clients on a TV or on a computer, right? Well, that is work. I'm engaged, I'm creating, and we're going to talk about the differences later on in the presentation. But with video games especially, or YouTube especially, these are and TikTok is becoming one of those time-consuming activities as well. We're seeing 3 or more hours a day spent on these. And there usually are side effects associated with them: loneliness, attention span issues, neglecting foundational parts of life, mood dysregulation. And what I mean by mood dysregulation is the inability to control their mood, right? So you'll see anger outbursts, you'll see tantrums, you will see aggression, all very disproportionate to the situation, right? Nobody should be having a anger outburst because their phone is being removed from them. Or you're seeing it even the other way, where they're becoming emotional to the point of sadness and self-harm, right? Where their life is over now because they don't have their phone. That is not a healthy relationship with technology. I should be able to go a day without looking out with my phone and my life not be ruined, right? We all know that. We all sense that. And so that is a good sign that is an unhealthy relationship with technology. The last one, this is really important too, and I see this a lot, especially as they transition into adulthood, where parents are less involved in their life, but poor sleep habits, including racing thoughts, erratic sleep schedules. And we see this especially with blue light devices like phones and video game systems, where if you're right up to the moment, and as adults, we might notice this too. if we're on these devices right up to the moment we're trying to go to sleep, it doesn't give our brain any time to calm down or relax. And we're seeing kids, especially, staying up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, then sleeping 4 hours and getting up and going to school, falling asleep in class. These are not healthy. These are not healthy relationships with technology either. Right? So I think we've all seen these in some shape or form. Next thing, these are different avenues for exposure. Now, I am constantly making an effort to stay as informed and as connected with these things as possible because I want to understand how these affect not just us, but our children and our teenagers. Um, so the first one is the most obvious one: smartphones. Never before in human history, not even before, I mean, not until the 90s that we have access, or early 2000s, we have access to this kind of information all the time. Our brains are not adjusted to it. Video games, obviously billions of dollars are poured into video games every year. YouTube, second highest visited site on the entire internet. Billions and billions of hours are spent on YouTube. And some of it's good for learning, some of it is just content. Um, Discord is another one of those not quite black or white options because it is a great way of communicating and connecting, but you can also spend lots of time on there, and that is a social site where we can connect and chat and to talk with our friends about any number of different things. Social media is obvious; it's become a bad guy recently. Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram and TikTok are some of the worst when it comes to behavioral regulation, not being able to control the impulses to use it. The thing I hear the most often is the sensation of losing time, where they will come out of a trance 2 hours later and realize they haven't put their phone down. Or they fall asleep and the phone hits them in the face, kind of thing, and that's always kind of funny to laugh at. But binge watching content, whether it's Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, or even YouTube again. Some of these you go, oh, I do these things too. This is unhealthy stuff. Online gaming is another one that kind of connects with video games. Pornography is the fastest growing online addiction on the planet. Pornography industry, I have a whole other talk on pornography, but the pornography industry makes more money than every other sports industry combined every year. So it is a fast growing industry, and it is everywhere. So forums, Reddit, 4chan, especially young boys who love to learn, they go into these spiraling holes of learning or reading on Reddit. And then for more adults, habitual email checking and gambling. Gambling is the second fastest growing addiction on the internet, and online gambling. So these are all things that I would encourage each parent, please understand what these things are, how they work, how they affect your kids, what they are exposed to. YouTube is not as harmless as it seems. You can run into all sorts of different things that you may not want your kids to watch on YouTube. So please be aware of these different avenues of technology. So why is this a problem? Technology is good. Technology helps us. Technology allows us to connect with people. Why is this a problem? The biggest thing that I've consistently seen is attention span issues. ADD diagnoses have increased over 800% in the last 30 years. That is not because all of a sudden we have somehow found we're suddenly more aware of ADD. No, it is about the way we use our brains. And I'm going to get more into that later. And it is about how we are spending our time and how we are utilizing our attention. I'm going to get into it a lot deeper later, but that is a big problem because children and teenagers are growing up believing that this is who they are, that they cannot focus, that they are unable to do this, that it is just who they are. And especially when I hear them claiming that they are ADD or ADHD, that's just who I am, that's just how I am. That becomes a part of their identity, and that becomes a problem. So second thing is increased loneliness. We are the most connected community on the planet, but we have the most loneliness in human history. In fact, the United Kingdom recently, in the last few years, has hired someone from the Department of from the NHS to investigate the epidemic of loneliness because it has become such a problem and a contributor to depression. So, third thing is, we are spending a copious amount of time on our devices, and we register that as a problem. I mean, emotionally, we know that we should be better. Emotionally, we know this isn't who we want to be. And it creates this dichotomy within ourselves of who we want to be and who we, you know, who we know we need to be, I should say, and who we want to be in the moment. And our kids know that too. Our kids know that this is a problem. They feel out of control. They feel like they don't have any ability to stop. So, and lastly, it's a problem because it actually disconnects us from healthy activities. It disconnects us from the ability to go outside, connect with nature, connect with human contact. Um, this last one is probably the thing that has me the most scared for our future is the direct human contact, the ability to have meaningful conversation, look people in the eyes, have real conflict, disagree in a meaningful way. That takes practice. That takes an ability to, that takes skill, that takes a tolerance for distress. And our kids are not getting to practice this. It is so much easier to have conflict when you are on a device. It is so much easier to break up with somebody or to let someone down or to ghost somebody than it is to actually say, I don't want to be your friend anymore because you hurt my feelings. Um, and so we're seeing increases in social anxiety. We're seeing more and more of the loneliness, like I talked about earlier, and we're seeing the disintegration of our community and our social fabric. And these are problems as well. And I'm not trying to be an alarmist. I am more just trying to state some things that I am seeing. So take a breath. Some effects on the brain. The brain is the thing that I'm the most concerned about. Obviously, lethargic lifestyles are not healthy for our bodies, but our brains are our biggest problem because obviously we can't go back to the Stone Age. We're not going to get away with get away from technology. It is going to continue to be here, if not more prevalent. But we need to understand how it impacts us. And so one of the first things, a lot of those activities that we talked about 2 slides earlier addressed, what it does is it floods the brain with dopamine, serotonin, and adrenaline. Especially video gaming, adrenaline is a big part of it. It's that thrill, that excitement, that chase, that it becomes a very intoxicating experience. And we process information in short, shallow bursts. So what I was getting at earlier about the attention span issue is that that it creates a problem with our ability to focus. Because now look at the way we consume information. Most information is consumed in 30 to 45-second bursts. Very rarely are we reading an entire article or an entire book. And if we are reading a book, it's on a computer. And so when we're not processing long, in-depth articles or books, it actually our brain becomes processed that way. The average YouTube video is 10 minutes. The average snippet, we're looking at are just a few minutes long, and we're constantly changing the subject over and over and over. And so it trains our brain to not that it doesn't have to stick to a topic for any long period of time, that we can continue to move on or change the subject. And so we get bored very easily. Our children get bored very easily. I'm sure you've seen that. And so our brain, it conditions our brains to enjoy what I like to call frictionless activities, activities that don't require a whole lot from you, activities that are very easy to consume, that don't require you to engage, like YouTube or TikTok. TikTok is a very trance-like state. You just kind of scroll. It's a very rhythmic activity. And that's part of the reason why it feels like you lose time, because you literally are going into a trance-like state while you're doing these activities. So the last thing is it decreases our tolerance for healthy, stressful activities. Part of growing up is learning to experience stress. I know stress has gotten a bad rap because we've had, just like technology, we've been experiencing too much of it. But a healthy exposure to stress actually creates stress tolerance, and it creates confidence. Being able to see yourself um, overcome adversity and come out on the other side okay, uh, actually creates confidence in the ability to interact in the adult world. Um, a couple last things. Over time, cravings cause our frontal lobe to be less active, which affects our decision-making abilities. So, um, as we become hungry for those dopamine, serotonin, and adrenaline hits, our frontal lobe, which is already not very well formed for our teenagers anyway, which is the center of our brain where we make decisions, we consider logical conclusions, we consider consequences, it shuts down and it becomes a addictive response. It becomes a compulsive response. I have to have this. And so you see that. You see where the considerations for all other things go away, and I need to play. I need to have this. And so lastly, and I think a lot of adults can relate to this too, numbing is the new normal. And not feeling our feelings. There is a horrible societal expectation now where we are expected to be happy all the time, and it's not real, it's not possible, it's not um, even attainable. And so when I see these teenagers and they come in and they're talking about being depressed, and I said, well, it just sounds like you've been sad or you've had a few bad days. And they go, they're shocked to learn that that's normal. That's okay to be sad. It's okay to experience stress. It's okay to have anything other than happiness in your life, and that is a normal human interaction. And so we've spent so much time as a society now running from our feelings, running from our problems, running from our issues, that numbing has become our new normal, and that's problematic. Um, So, neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is an amazing new science over the last 30 years, and it really basically can be summarized as one phrase, and that is our brain adapts to the way that they're used. For the longest time, as long as we were doing psychology and neurology, we believed that after about 16 or 17 years old, the brain was cemented. It was solid. It wasn't going to change. That if you had depression when you were 17, you were going to have depression for the rest of your life, and there was no way you could change that. But we're learning now that the brain is actually very malleable, and it's constantly changing. It's constantly adapting. And one really prominent case and example of this is the London taxi drivers examination. And what they did was they did brain scans of dozens of London taxi drivers. And the reason they did this is because in order to be a London taxi driver, you actually have to pass a test. And the test is you have to be able to navigate the entire city of London by memory. You have to have memorized the entire city of London. There are no maps, there are no cheating. You just have to have the whole city of London memorized. Um, and so they did these brain scans on these taxi drivers who'd been doing the job for 10 to 15 years. And what they found is that the sections of the brain that that controlled navigation and spatial awareness had consumed 30% of the rest of the brain. And it actually had taken over other parts of the brain. So those other parts of the brain were functioning um, as a spatial awareness section. And so they saw that the brain had actually adapted to the way it was being used. They saw that the brain was changing to facilitate the way these taxi drivers used it. And so what that is showing us is that the way we use our brain, it gets stronger in that way. It doesn't determine whether it's healthy or unhealthy. It's a neutral tool. And so the way we use it dictates the way it wants to be used. So I typically distinguish between two types of tasks in the way we use our brain. We have creative tasks, tasks that engage us, that require something from us. They require participation from us, whether it's writing or reading a book. And you might say, well, reading is more of a consumption hobby too. But when you're reading a book, you actually are creating the world in your brain. You are having to follow the story, interpret the story, and participate with the story. As opposed to watching TV where you are just consuming the story that they are giving you. You don't have to put your own spin on it. You don't have to imagine the characters. They're doing all of that for you. So having a conversation is a friction task. talking about your day, recalling your day is a friction task. And frictionless tasks are tasks that don't really require a lot from us. They feel very effortless. We can sit and we can lose time, and we would consider it relaxing, and within moderation, that's sometimes good. Sometimes we do have to unplug. I can tell you that personally, after a long week of listening, sitting outside in silence and doing nothing and just consuming nature is a is a good task for me. So the other way is neural pathways. So neural pathways are what we see with neural pathways is that we can actually create new sections and new structures in our brain just by the way we use it and the way we think. And they actually have video if you want to go, ironically enough, if you want to go on YouTube and you can see actual dendrites being formed in the brain as people are thinking different thoughts. And so neural pathways are where we find habits and routines, and we see these well-worn pathways that like you would think about driving to work or commuting to work. It is a well-worn routine that doesn't require a lot of effort. And so we have a good quote here that there is evidence that the cells of our brains literally develop and grow bigger with use, and atrophy or waste away with disuse. And so skills like being bored, waiting, learning to focus, learning to participate in difficult things, these are skills that can actually be atrophied and wasted away, but they can get better. They can get better. And so one of the cycles of compulsion that I like to point out for adults and for teenagers and kids is that we will get anxious, whether it's stress from school, stress from work, stress from family, friends, whatever. We'll get anxious, we'll get uncomfortable, we'll get out of feel any kind of negative emotion at all. And instead of dealing with it, we numb, right? Well, most of those numbing activities, whether it's food or technology, pornography, acting out in any kind of way, typically is not something that we really want to be doing. None of us numb with salad, right? That's kind of my joke, is that none of us numb with salad and exercise. We typically numb with pizza and movies, right? And those things in and of themselves are not necessarily intrinsically awful or terrible or bad. And I'm not saying we give up pizza and movies, but when we're doing it in an effort to avoid negative emotions, they can become problematic. So we typically feel shame or guilt or disappointment with ourselves. And instead of addressing the real root of the cause, again, why am I running from these problems? Stuff that we would do in counseling, for instance, we feel again, and then we numb again, and then we feel bad about that, and then we, and it's a compulsive cycle that we feel trapped in. And if I was sitting in front of you, I'm sure I could get some hands raised on how many people have felt this way or experienced this cycle before. So the anxiety equation, there is so many different things that make us anxious, and our teenagers are anxious. And it's one of the fastest growing diagnoses in the planet, is anxiety disorders. And I think it is a problem because it has never been this bad. It has never been, and it's not just that we are more comfortable talking about mental health. That is not the explanation. The first one would be ignoring responsibilities and escaping from reality. These are one of the biggest things that I'm seeing in 22, 23, 24-year-olds is a lack of confidence in their ability to be adults. They don't know how to be adults. They don't know, have any confidence to be able to take a risk, perform at a real level, and to pay their bills, to take care of themselves. One of the other alarming issues that we're seeing is that the amount of teenagers who are signing up for their driver's license is at an all-time low. It's consistently been decreasing. And one of the reasons for that is because driving is one of the first places that our teenagers are able to engage with real, meaningful responsibility and risk. And they're terrified. Every single kid that I talk to about their driver's license is because they're terrified of getting into accidents. and they're terrified of making mistakes. The third thing is FOMO, fear of missing out. I'm sure we've all seen, heard, or experienced this in ourselves. I get it sometimes too. I mean, my wife will occasionally get a text from a friend. I'm like, oh, who is that? What's going on? And I want to be a part of it, right? She laughs at me because my FOMO kind of gets out of control. I don't want to be missing out. We don't want to feel like we're being rejected or missing out. And it's actually even more prevalent now with social media because you can see your friends having fun. And if you're not invited, you feel rejected, you feel like you're not important, you feel like it's you're being left out. And then you begin to wonder, is there something wrong with me? Did I do something wrong? And that goes on to that fourth part about constant contact. We don't know, there is no stopping. There is no break. There is no just strictly family time anymore unless you take away their devices every night. Their friends have constant access to them. I know at least when I was growing up, when I came home from school, unless I got on a phone, like a home phone, a landline, and I was talking to somebody on that, um, I didn't have any contact with friends outside of, unless I was playing outside. And so there's constant need to be talking, and there's a constant pressure because on the other hand, if I don't respond to the text message immediately, then that person's going to be upset, right? So um, there's actually been studies that show that we as a society feel a compulsive pressure to respond to text messages as if it is a real-time conversation, which makes us all feel a little bit stressed, right? If I don't respond to this, are they going to feel like I'm disrespecting them or being rude to them? And this contributes also to lower self-esteem, comparison, unrealistic expectations, and last but not least, kind of my last big point is this decreased tolerance for stress. We all need to experience stress in healthy levels, healthy doses. And it comes back to this one phrase that I've heard many times from parents, and that is, I didn't want my kids to go through what I went through. I didn't want them to experience the struggles that I experienced. And so in an effort to shield them from that, in an effort to provide them with a life of stress-free living, what we've actually done is, to a certain extent, is decrease their ability to deal with things that we would consider to be very normal, healthy levels of stress because they've never taken those baby steps. Um, so how do we help? How do we help without going back in time and um, removing technology from existence, right? We don't want to get rid of this. This is a very useful tool, just like sugar, and it is in moderation and in proper proportions, it can be very healthy and very good for us. I mean, we can do amazing things with technology. So how do we as a community, as family members, as faculty, as staff, how do we help these teenagers um, deal with this, regulate this? So the first thing I want to distinguish between is a perspective. It's a mindset that we have to have. The first one is the candy perspective. It is exciting but not satisfying. Most of the things that I listed on that second slide are candy. They are exciting, but they are not satisfying. Very few times we know it's not satisfying because we can't get enough of it. We don't get done watching Netflix and going, oh, that was just so satisfying. No, what do we say? We say, just one more, just one more. It has very little substance. It doesn't actually challenge us. It doesn't make us better people most of the time. And the long-term results are shame, stress, and unresolved problems, right? So I say all this because it's in the how do we help section by pointing out the distinction. So salad is filling but not exciting. Salad is one of those foods where you eat it and you are no longer full, but you don't get really, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing salad ever, right? It feels neutral. But the long-term results are you're healthier and more confident. You feel better, and you register it in your heart or in your mind that you are making a good decision that is good for you. I have yet to meet the person who is like proud of the fact that they watched 8 hours of Netflix. I have not met that person. That doesn't mean they don't exist, but it's not something that we're proud of as adults. So, uh, healthy brain skills. Now, I use the word skill because it is something that we can learn. It is something that we have all learned. It is something that we experienced as children. growing up, because our parents would tell us to stop, sit still, be quiet, and we'd have to wait. And we didn't have iPads to sit in front of. It is a skill. Now it was a skill that was forced upon us because there were no other alternatives. But it is a skill nonetheless. And so it can still be taught. It is something that can still be learned. Now it is not pleasant because it is not, all of these skills, these healthy brain skills, are the salad. They are something that makes us actually feel better, that would make us be able to handle real life, that would make us healthier, but that actually is difficult to do. So the first one is waiting. I have to catch myself with this one. Waiting in a room, sitting still. I actually kind of challenge myself now. I sit down in a place and I don't touch anything. I just sit and I sit with my thoughts. Being bored. And being creative is also at the same thing. One of my favorite quotes is, "Only boring people get bored," and and I think that's very true. Being able to be comfortable with my thoughts and to just think things, and to let my mind wander and then bring it back. These are skills that we need to be implementing with our children. Having conversations, thinking things through, solving puzzles, actual physical puzzles with puzzle pieces, as a family, where we work together and communicate about the puzzle. Uh, Working with your hands, building something, whether it's teaching them how to fix things or work around the house or mowing a lawn. One of the first things that I consistently tell parents of 15, 16, 17-year-olds is let them go get a job. Let them go get a job, working with your hands, making their own money, because it is probably one of the best things that can be done for them to help them build their confidence, because you're working with other adults who are challenging you, and they're not your teachers, and they're not there to hold your hand. They're there to push you, but they also recognize when you do a good job, right? And so there's some confidence because they're making their own money. Reading paper books. This is something that I cannot emphasize more. And especially for adults, if any of you are watching this and you have trouble going to sleep, I would really, really encourage you, put your devices down 60 to 90 minutes before you're going to go to sleep. Read a paper book for 30 to 45 minutes before you go to sleep while you're in bed. It makes a world of difference. There's no blue light. You are giving your mind time to decompress. You're focusing on one thing. Your eyes are going back and forth. It is something that actually will help relax you. Telling stories, and this also connects to healthy brain skill of sitting and having dinner together as a family. This is very, very, very important. And this, I think I get to this later in the presentation. So the last two are eye contact. Have your children look at you in the eyes, feel what you're feeling. It is scary because one of the reasons why our children aren't developing empathy or emotional intelligence is because they are mainly learning to communicate through a screen and through a keyboard. And so it's very easy to dehumanize the other person on the other side of that screen, because you don't have to look at them. You don't have to see the impact of what is being said. Some of the stuff that is said on online gaming is terrible. Please be aware of that. Last thing is slowing down, taking a walk, going into nature, slowing down, not being stimulated all the time, not having to move from one thing to the next, embracing silence. And these are important because not just because it's important for these children to live these monastic lifestyles, but it's because we can't be entertained all the time. We can't be stimulated all the time, and it's not healthy for us to be stimulated all the time. It's important for us to relax and to do nothing. So we can get it back. These skills are something that can be regrown. As I pointed out earlier, our brain adapts. Even adults. I mean, our adults are now losing a lot of those skills. They had them, and now they're losing them. And so set the example, parents. Please, 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 please Set the example. Um, this cannot be a do as I say, not as I do example, because it won't work. And they will see you on your phone, you on Facebook, you on Netflix, and they will just assume that you don't want to hang out with them. And please, teenagers are never going to be enthusiastic about family time all the time. That's just, I wasn't. I doubt you were too. It's a part of the rebellion and the independence that is teenagers. And so we have to check in regularly, be prepared for them to be annoyed with you. They aren't going to like any of this because you are taking away the candy. You are taking away the candy and you are making them eat salad. None of us were happy about, none of us would be happy about that either. So um, be mindful of online activity, monitor them. It's not that I don't think you should trust your children. It is that I don't trust everybody else on the internet. So please check devices often. There's a great feature on iPhone um, for screen time. Please set the limits, 30 minutes to an hour on some of these social media apps like Instagram or TikTok. Um, Set boundaries for devices and reclaim ownership. You own the phone, you own the devices. And I was actually even talking to the directors of technology just yesterday about really emphasizing to the parents, like, you have control of these take-home devices from school. There, you have the ability to set restrictions and to pull it away if it's unhealthy. So have device free time. Board games are one of my favorite ways to engage. Having a game night with your family is an imperative. It is important. It is a great way to have conversation. It is a great way to engage and do strategy and think together and have fun together. Um, and it's really low key. And yeah, they're not going to be super enthusiastic, but it's just like with children. When you make it cool, it can be cool. It can be a good time. Um, Family dinners, I talked about. Mandatory quality time. I know it seems like an oxymoron, but it really is one of those situations that once you get them there and you show them how good this can be, um, they will enjoy it. Most of our teenagers don't know what they don't know. They don't know how good life can be away from devices. Um, and last but not least, you put your devices down too and give lots of encouragement. This isn't easy. Do it together as a family. Set the example as a family and allow them to see the changes take place in the home. The benefits will come. Uh, I know the taste of kale and spinach is off putting initially, but the benefits and the way you feel physically and emotionally later will feel better. So I have some resources here. Um, this is each one of these books is a really great resource. I would really emphasize that if you can at least read one, I would read Glow Kids by Nicholas Kardaras. He is a psychologist who started looking at some of the unhealthy effects of screen problems, and these are some of the resources that I used to inform my talk tonight too. Um, these are really helpful, and I would encourage anybody who has any questions or concerns or issues, please feel free to contact um, your the counselors at your local school and ask them any questions. I also have some information here. If you have any questions for me, my office is in Colleyville, um, and I'd be happy to answer any kind of email or concerns um, or provide any kind of resources. Um, so I hope this helps. I hope this is something that will show us that technology isn't bad, but needs to be balanced with just as much healthy connection. And we need to see that we're using our technology not to make our world better sometimes, but just to make our world tolerable, and that is not great. So I appreciate you guys giving me this opportunity. Thank you.